Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, recording from the Unscripted studio at the Junction in Old Hilliard, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
Great Redeemer, God of grace.
All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted from my basement. Thank you, Corby, for the audio, and we look forward to moving over to the Junction very, very soon in Old Hilliard. But for tonight, I have a very special guest with me, and it's a very special guest because it's a very special league. And Joe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
So my name is Joe Fox, and I have the privilege and the pleasure of being the director of the Miracle League of Central Ohio.
There you go. Joe, and you just told me this offline, but let's go ahead and cover it with the audience since they weren't listening.
Sure.
How you said you are the league director for the Miracle League of Central Ohio. You have been doing this for 11 years, right?
11 years. Yep. The Miracle League of Central Ohio actually started back in 2005. So this is our 16th year. I have been the league director for the past 11 years. Prior to that, I was actually an announcer for 2 years, which is the best job in the world. I can talk more about that later.
Yeah.
So I've been involved for 13 of the 16 years.
There you go. Yes. So let's start off, I guess, with an introduction to the Miracle League, because there may be somebody here that will hear this that's never heard of the Miracle League.
Sure.
We are blessed to be, 5 miles away from one of the fields where I live. And so I am familiar with it, and I can tell a little personal story at some point as well. But for anybody that's not familiar with the Miracle League, can you explain to us what the Miracle League is?
Sure. The Miracle League is a baseball league for athletes with special needs. And we have, when I say special needs, I mean all kinds of special needs. We have athletes who are in wheelchairs, athletes with walkers, a lot of autistic athletes. The span of age for players in the Miracle League ranges from about 3 to in their 30s, and I'll talk a little bit about the two different leagues. The Miracle League plays at a special field at Darey Fields in Dublin. Mm-hmm. It has a special surface, an AstroTurf surface that enables players to play with wheelchairs and walkers. This summer, we have more than 250 players in our Saturday league, which is the larger league. We'll probably have another 30 to 40 players in our night league, which is for older teens and young adults. Awesome. The Miracle League of Central Ohio is one of about 200 Miracle Leagues around the country. We actually are one of the biggest.
Wow. Yeah, I believe so. Based on some statistics that I saw I think it was an NBC News report where they covered it. And that is a very large and
we
group.
keep growing every year. This past year, we did not play last summer because of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. But we just started our 2021 season on May the 1st. And despite the pandemic, we almost broke the record for the number of players, which I think says a lot about how anxious everybody is to get things back to normal. So, yeah,
absolutely.
And so far, we have played May 1st and May 15th. We could not play May the 8th because it was too cold.
It's cold. Would you believe that in May, yes. Right? But I think that's a good point. Don't you play your seasons a little earlier in the summer? And then is there one in the fall as well because of the weather and maybe the challenges that would present for some athletes?
Yes. So what we do is we usually start in early May and we usually go until mid-July. So we have a 10-game season. So we do not play either Memorial Day weekend or the 4th of July weekend. Every Saturday, the Saturday League plays 8 games. There are 16 teams, each with about 15 or 16 players on each team. And we do start in early May because by the middle to end of July, it gets very, very hot out there. And we're very sensitive to protecting our players.
Yeah.
So this year we finish up on July the 17th.
Okay. And is there a fall league as well? Or is
There
it
is not, although we do have the night league, which is the league for older teens and young adults. They do play into September because they're playing at night, so it's cooler.
Yeah.
And then usually at the end of September or in early October, when we can avoid a Buckeye football game, have our World Series, where we scramble the teams and we form all-star teams, and that's our special event in September. And then one more time we get together, typically in December, for what we call Afternoon with Santa. We have a event where the special needs kids can come, and for many of them, it's their first chance to sit on Santa's lap. So it's really a special day.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's what I was going to say. My experience, and I'll go into a little bit more about the experience again a little bit later. But the one experience that I had that I thought was so special was this is a party. I mean, it is fun. Really? It is from the minute you walk up. There's a DJ, as you said, you're the announcer, right, or you were the announcer, and it's a booming voice and it's exciting, and they say each player's name. And I mean, you would think you're at a Major League Baseball game in the World Series itself. There's so much just fanfare and fun, and I think they had snow cones or ice cream cones or something when I was there the one time, and it's just a blast, and all it's really all about having fun and giving an opportunity, and that's why I love it so much. It's really, I mean, it's special. It's very, very special.
You have described the environment perfectly. It's probably one of the most uplifting environments you can be in. You know, in today's world where sports are so competitive, right, you come there and everybody is rooting for every player, right, and magically, even if there are 15 players on one team and 12 on the other, every game ends up in a tie. Somehow we create some runs, but it's just such a positive experience. Mm-hmm. I can talk a little bit more about some of the volunteers and how it's a very positive experience for them too. It's really a positive experience for everybody because obviously the players are getting a chance to play baseball, which they ordinarily would not get to do. Mm-hmm. It's a great thing for the families because their life is more difficult than my life and a lot of the other volunteers. Mm-hmm. And so for them to come and just relax for an hour and watch their child have fun, mm-hmm, that's very special for them. And then for the volunteers, it really is given back to the community, makes you realize how fortunate you are. And the volunteers, we have a lot of kids, we have a lot of adults, and I think everybody would say they get more out of it than they give. So
100%. And I think that extends to the fans as well. And that was, you know, as I said, my experience to revisit that. I took my kids. We had a friend whose son played in the league, and we don't get to see him often. They were in town, so we're like, oh, let's go over. And I always wanted to see it anyway. I had seen reports about it, so I wanted to see what the field was like and the environment and everything. And we went over, and my kids had such a good time. They wanted to go back the next week. That's great. You know what I mean? And that was the honest truth. They wanted to go back again, and they wanted to celebrate our friend, but also I think just be in the environment. And for me, that was awesome because all three of my kids are in some level of sports. And I remember walking away thinking every coach, and if you're hearing this and you have a team, I don't care what league it is, it's swimmers, wrestlers, football players, basketball players, it doesn't matter what sport, you need to take your team and you need to spend a Saturday. Obviously, you're going to talk about volunteering. That would be ultimate. But just stop by a game and watch, even just for a few innings, and I guarantee your team's going to have a little bit of an opportunity to maybe take some inventory on priorities, on how fortunate they are, and all those things. It's just a very special, and it's fun. It's really fun. So,
and that is very true. You know, we actually have numerous occasions during the summer when teams come out. And they come out for a day. Many of them during the summer are playing in tournaments themselves on Saturdays. So they can't commit to being a buddy throughout the entire season. But we have what we call game day buddies, and they come out for a day, and we try to assign them to players, or they become first base coaches and third base coaches, or they become catchers, or they help the announcer. And we try to make it a fun experience for them with the hope that maybe they will become buddies someday.
Yeah. No, that you touched on that. So there's some different levels and opportunities. When I'm a buddy, what does a buddy look like? What is that?
Yeah.
What does that job look like?
So I mentioned we have 250 players. This summer we have more than 300 volunteers, and the vast majority of them are buddies. And buddies are typically middle school or high school students who help the players bat, run the bases, and play catch when they're on the field. And so some of the buddies are adults. Sometimes parents want to be the buddy for their child, and that's perfectly okay. But the buddies really are what make the Miracle League work, because we need a lot of volunteers. And it's really great because if someone can commit to a 10-game season, and nobody makes it all 10 games. Everybody's got a wedding or a visit to grandmother or a vacation. But if they can come, you really begin to get a bond between the player and the buddy. We try to pair them up every week. And then what's really neat, Aaron, is when they come back the next year and they pair again. There have been some player buddy pairs that have stayed together for like 5, 6, 7 years, and they become very, very close. It is really neat to see.
I love that.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And the other thing, one of the things we've just done, we've just closed the application process. We give out a couple of small college scholarships to graduating seniors who have been buddies. And they have to write an essay. And what's really neat when you see these essays,
I bet.
How many of them have said their involvement in the Miracle League actually influences their choice of what they want to major in college and what they want to do. It's really something, something.
There's no doubt in my mind that I don't know how you can go to a Miracle League game, let alone really immerse yourself as a volunteer or even more, and not be changed somehow. Walk away the same way as you got there. I don't know. I really don't, because and I would think that the volunteers do a pretty good job too of bringing the energy and the excitement, and the players are really excited too, but those buddies, I'm sure, help a lot with really keeping the excitement up too.
They do. They definitely do. And I mentioned being an announcer because, as I said, that is the best job in the world, because all of the kids have nicknames. So you've got Hunter the Bunter coming up, and Mash and Maddie, and Princess Sophia, and Princess Doodlebug. And it's so much fun because you're announcing their name as they bat and they run the bases, and you make a real big deal when they score. The last batter of every inning gets a grand slam. So, their grand slam is going to be on Sports Center, and so it's really a lot of fun to be an announcer.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned, so what are the needs? Because the league is funded by sponsorship only. Is that correct?
So there's two main sources of funding. The first is registration fees. The players do pay, and it's a very nominal fee. This year, it was $40 to play in the summer league. And if you play in virtually any other baseball league, you'll be paying 2, 3, 5 times that. So, and even with that, if someone cannot pay, we actually use some of our sponsorship money to enable them to pay.
Okay.
So there's the registration fees, but then the biggest source of income is actually the sponsorships. And we have 4 levels of sponsorship, and I'll just briefly describe them.
Yeah, please.
There are season sponsors, and so that's the highest level of sponsorship. That's a $2,500 sponsorship, and you get a lot of publicity, a lot of visibility. Your banners are in center field. Your names are always getting announced. And just to give you some examples of who they are this year, it's the Columbus Clippers, it's Scott's Miracle Grow, it's Orthopedic One, the W.W. Williams Company. There's a family that runs a fundraiser called the Wishing Well, and then the City of Dublin. And I'll say more about the City of Dublin in a little while because they have been a tremendous partner. So that's the highest level. And then there are team sponsorships, and we have 16 teams, and a team sponsorship is $500. And team sponsorships are everybody. There are big companies, there are small companies, there are churches, there are families, and so that's the second level. The third sponsorship is what we call a special event sponsorship. That's $400, and we have 5 special events every year. We just had what we call Celebration Day because we were celebrating the fact that COVID-19 is over and we were playing baseball again.
Awesome.
We have Grandparents' Day, we have Trophy Day, we have the World Series and Afternoon with Santa. And then the last level of sponsorship is $250, and that's what we call a game day sponsorship. When it's not a special event day, you're sponsoring all 8 games. And in all cases, you're getting a lot of visibility with signs at the field, dugout signs, banners, the announcer, and on the website. So the sponsorships are really critical. And so that's how we're always looking for new sponsors, and we're also always looking for new volunteers.
Okay. And you mentioned, just so I want to make sure I understood this right, because I know a podcast that, like I said, offline might be interested in a sponsorship. At all level, there's banners, and it's not just.
Well, the description of the benefits from each, there's actually information on the website.
Okay.
The
perfect.
banners in center field are for the season sponsors. So this year there are 6 season sponsors, and their banners hang all throughout the season. The team sponsors, there are dugout signs with the names of the team sponsors.
Gotcha.
The special event sponsors, they get publicity on the day of the special event, and
Gotcha.
the game day sponsors the same thing. So the banners are really for the season sponsors.
Gotcha. And I know you ran through that. I just wanted to clarify again.
Yep.
But either way, I got to tell you, I mean, I kind of spend my days doing this type of work, for sponsors for companies and things like that. And $2,500 may be the best deal in town when it comes to a sponsorship level, and especially when it's the top tier. I mean, a lot of people are going for $25,000, and that's $2,500 is what you said, correct?
Right.
$2,500. I mean, that's not to sound like I'm trying to drum up money, but I mean, that's $2,500 is awesome for a big company. That's nothing. And,
right.
And I'm sure, and again, it goes to an incredibly great cause, and that's awesome. Those are great levels for volunteers.
And so, the other thing we do is for many of the sponsors, we will invite them to come out and throw the first pitch at one or more games. So this week, one of the churches, the president of the men's club is coming out and throwing the first pitch. Last week at Celebration Day, we had the mayor of Dublin, one of the city council members, the person that is their events coordinator, and the person that's in charge of field maintenance. They all came out and threw out first pitches. So
that's great.
We really appreciate our sponsors, and we try to acknowledge them.
That's great. And you mentioned the city of Dublin. Did you want to touch on the city of Dublin? You said?
Oh yeah, I could go on for a long time with the city of Dublin. So let me just start this way and say, the creation of the Miracle League in Dublin is probably one of the most impressive grassroots stories you will ever hear. Okay?
Awesome.
This goes back to 2005. And a gentleman by the name of Terry Lydon, who's a Dublin resident, was watching ESPN, and he heard about a Miracle League in Alabama or Georgia. And although Terry did not have a special needs child, he actually went to Dublin City Council, and he said, we need to do something like this in Dublin. We need to create a league like this. And from the very outset, Dublin City Council was very supportive. They said to Terry, we will give you the land. Okay, there's a parcel of land at Darry Fields that we could commit. but Terry, it's going to be up to you to raise the money.
Wow.
Well, Terry and a small handful of volunteers raised several $100,000 by reaching out to the corporate community. And I can remember actually going to the groundbreaking. It was in May of 2005. I knew about it because I was involved in Dublin baseball, and they invited people to come out for the groundbreaking, and they had the mayor of Dublin and some of the big sponsors. And I remember looking literally at a field of corn and saying, and they said, well, it's May. We're gonna not play during the summer because the field won't be done until September. We're gonna play in the fall. And I looked at my wife and I said, there's no way they're gonna be no way. Okay. And I was partially right, because they finished the field ahead of schedule and started playing in August, which was and all of this was the grassroots effort by a handful of people with support from the city of Dublin. Since then, all 16 years, the city of Dublin has been a tremendous partner. They have helped us expand our facilities. They've helped us put shading over the bleachers. We were one of the first baseball fields in Dublin to have shading over the bleachers. They put a new garage on that has become our storage space. They help with all of the field maintenance. They've helped with special events. We had what we call our 10cennial for our 10th anniversary. The city of Dublin gave us money to help us with that event. We cannot thank the city of Dublin enough. And it's been fantastic, just fantastic.
And it is a gorgeous facility. It is really, really nice. I mean, does anybody play on that field when you're not in season, or is it off limits?
So no, it's definitely open. But I would actually like to see it used more by other groups. I have reached out to Special Olympics, for example, and said, come out and use the field. And also, there is a special needs playground, and there are actually some training stations for Special Olympics where you can come out and do some workouts. So I've reached out to Special Olympics. What also happens is that some special needs classes at the schools will reach out to me and say, could we use the field on a Thursday for one of our classes? And the answer is always yes. And then there are families in the league that will say, we'd like to have our birthday party out there. And the answer is yes. Okay. And then I think a church group one time, they wanted to have a kickball tournament. So we had a kickball tournament. Do you rent the field, or or do they just need to contact you? Everything is free. All you have to do is contact me, and that's doable through the website. And we can make the equipment available. And so, there is no charge to use the field.
Even more reason to be a sponsor then. I mean, there's cost. There has to be a cost involved. Even when somebody's just borrowing it, there has to be a cost involved. But to your point, in my previous life, I just recently left a facility that we had some indoor space. And my favorite days, despite we had some mega stars in there at times, but my favorite days were the days that the special needs classes would come over from Hilliard schools. It was my favorite email every year. Hey, can we come over? We'd get it on the calendar, and it was just fun. I enjoyed it. And then they always, I still have them in my office here at the house. They would always write me thank you notes afterwards. And they get a tear in your eye.
Tug at your heart. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I've got some of those too. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so tender and special. And again, we're inundated, especially for those of us that have kids in sports. We can easily start to go down a path and a river that just takes us wherever it takes us. And before you know it, we got to be in this league, and we got to wear this uniform. We have to play on this and do that. And, and it just brings you quickly back to remember it's just such a simple, fun game. And there's a lot of people that just want to play. Want to play. That's it. And so I'm such a huge fan of everything that the Miracle League does. And again, these are across the country. So anybody listening to the podcast that maybe reaches outside of Ohio, please check locally, because there's probably one. Do you know how many states they're in by chance?
I honestly don't know, but I know there are over 200.
Yeah.
And one of the neat things that the national organization has done, and they started this 2 years ago, they actually have a national all-star game.
Oh,
And
wow.
they invite all of the leagues to send a representative. And so now they didn't have one last year because of COVID, but we have sent a representative to both of the all-star games. And one was easy. One was in Findlay, Ohio. So
Nice.
actually, one of our night league teams went up and became the opposition for the all-star team. But 2 years ago, I went to the all-star game with one of our veteran players and his parents to Sioux City, Iowa. And Aaron, this was amazing because literally, as they introduced the players, they walked out of a field of corn, just like in a field of dreams.
Oh, that's great.
Now, it wasn't real corn, it was metal corn,
Still.
but it was the coolest thing
Yeah.
to have them come out of the corn onto the Miracle League field. And then they did a wonderful job hosting the All-Star weekend. So
Yeah. Well, I can tell by your joy in this conversation that you love what you do, and
I tell
it's
everybody
so rare.
this is the best thing I have ever done. No,
Yeah.
without question. So
Well, that's awesome. So just to recap, and I think probably let's start with the links. So if I've heard this and I'm interested, let's just say I'm in Ohio, I'm interested in volunteering or one of the 4 sponsorship levels or
Right.
being a buddy or any of the things we've talked about, what's my next move?
So we do have a website, and that is www.miracleleaguecentraloh.org.
Okay.
MiracleLeagueCentralOH.org. And when you go to the website, you can find information about volunteering, find information about sponsorships. If you're a player, that's where all of the registration happens. That's where all the schedules are posted. And then there's contact information. We have a Gmail account, and we can answer questions. A lot of times when people are interested, I will usually schedule a phone call with them. It's a lot easier than 5 or 6 emails to just talk to somebody on the phone for 20 minutes. And usually after I describe the opportunities, people are hooked. They'll say, I want to become an announcer, or I'd like to be an assistant coach. You know, I used to play baseball, and so I'd like to coach. Groups will say, we want to host the refreshments on Grandparents' Day. So go to the website, get the contact information, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, and you were happy enough that you responded to my email for this interview, and I'm very thankful for that, because it was one of those kind of Hail Marys, like, well, let's see what happens, and I was so honored because I'm such a huge fan and have been ever since my first visit.
I mean, yeah, this is great, and it spreads the word, and so thank you very much for the invitation to do this.
I'm blown away by your sponsorship levels. I really am. And I'm pretty serious. I really hope a year from now, put me on the hook. Okay. When a year from now, when it comes to sponsorship time, you better reach out, and I'll forget the timing.
One of the things that we have been very blessed with, I will say this, I will say the generosity associated with the Miracle League has made me a more generous person. Mm-hmm. Once you come out, you're touched, and people are very, very generous. And because of that, what you find is that many of our sponsors just carry over from year to year. We have a very high retention rate. Where we lose sponsors is if it's a family and the family moves away. Okay. Or sometimes a company might get acquired by another company.
Yeah.
But those are the exceptions rather than the rule. It's not uncommon to have 95% of our sponsors say, yeah, put me down again. So.
Yeah. And especially at those levels. And I am very serious because I just, and it's not about marketing for me. It really isn't. To me, it's really about just supporting something that I'm just such a big fan and really believe in. And thank you for all you do too. You give a lot of your time. I'm sure this isn't, this isn't just a couple hours on a Saturday. It's a big job. And the success of the league is clearly because of your leadership in that. And so thank you for leading that.
I have a lot of help, a lot of good help, believe me.
Well, we could always use more. So if you're hearing this,
right.
Let's go to, let's give those sponsorship levels, but also look at the volunteering. And I am very serious when I say, Coach, if you're hearing this, and I don't know what coach may be listening, but whatever coach you are, please reach out, because I can't recommend it enough that you go and just, even if you just spend an inning, just watch an inning and let your team kind of just get some perspective, and I guarantee they'll have a great time. So,
and you want to bring your team out. Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. It really, I hope.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
On the website, the schedule is that on there as well?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome. On the home page at the bottom are the schedules for all 10 weeks. First game starts at 9:45. Last game starts at 6:30, and you can come and root for your favorite team. The other thing I'm going to guarantee is I'm going to be out before the summer's over, before the season's over. I want to get out, and I'll shout at you. I'm sure you're busy on that day. So. Usually hanging around the announcer's booth, and I'm there for much of the season. Again, I've got some very good volunteers, so every once in a while I can sneak home and have lunch or have dinner. But I'm usually there at the beginning and there at the end, because there's a lot to do in terms of setup and takedown. So
I'm sure. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I hope to see you this summer. Aaron. I will definitely hear from you next year, probably a few months before that time. And I really am serious about that. And I thank you so much for your time, and best of luck the rest of the season.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. Great talking to you.
All right. Good talking to you too. Take care.
This has been the latest episode of the Unscripted podcast with your host, Aaron Conrad, from his studio at the Junction in Old Hilliard. Make sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song Great and Mighty One on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll be back with another great guest soon. We'll see you next time.